My name is Tammy Jessom Richards, and I wanted to put down some of the oral history that I have learned about the house here that we are about to leave. My husband Paul have been living here 25 plus years. We raised our children here. My grandmother, Helen Hinden Ballou and Henry Ballou, raised 8 children in this house. My mother was one of them. And then she was an only child. My grandmother was raised in this house, and her father, my great-grandfather Hinden, was also raised in this house. So this will be the first time that the house has gone out of the family, which is a little sad, but it's good to see that it's moving on to someone who will appreciate it and bring some new life to it. This is rather a large house, and it's been added to over the years. The room that we are in right now is one of the original parts of the home. So I'm going to switch the camera to the other side so that you can see the side of the house that we're on. This is the front of the house. You can see there and over there the cedar posts that are used for this house, which helps to age the house. As far as we know, if you go to Douglas and look at the town records say that this house was here since 1830. However, that's when Douglas started the town records. We believe this house is more like 1790s to 1820s, somewhere in that neck of the woods, mostly because of the cedar beams. That's a much older type of construction, and the thinness of the walls. The walls are very, very thin in here. So, originally, my grandmother believed that this house was 3 rooms. This being the end of the house. This was no door here, it was a wall. And there was that room, this room, and then the kitchen. And this is all you can see. It makes a square with these 2 rooms in the kitchen. However, when we had heat put in, the gentleman who was putting in the heat knew a lot about older homes, and it was like a hobby of his, and he said, do you realize that this house was originally just these 2 front rooms? And we said, no, we didn't know that. But he believed that this home was originally just 2 rooms. There was never a fireplace in this house. We've never been able to find one. And we have since learned through, I believe it's Peter Coppola, his mother Shirley Coppola was sort of like a town historian. And he said that he believes that this house was originally a farm store for people who lived out past here. This was kind of the end of town here. And out on Perry Street, U Street, that was all, there was hardly anybody out there, just a few farms here and there. So he had heard of a farm being out here in this area, and from looking at what he's learned, he believes that this used to be a farm, and farm market, a little store. And it kind of makes sense if this was only 2 rooms. So it started to make a little bit more sense when the heating gentleman said, I think this was originally 2 rooms. This window right here, if you look at it, it's a little bit thicker than the other windows. This window was the original door into the house. When it was just 3 rooms, we have pictures of that on the wall. And this was the door into the house, the main door into the house. So we believe that these were the first 2 rooms that they had in there. And then this room was added. Now, there was the first, as far as I know, the first people to live in this house was my great-great-grandmother. Her name was Rachel. She was originally a Thompson. And the Thompson homestead is down the street from here. Before you hit here, there was a farm there. And we believe that that was, well, I know that was the original homestead, and they owned the property all the way out to Maple Street and all the way up here to this property. This was the end of their property. So I often wonder, I think what probably happened is that Rachel and her husband, Henry Hinden, needed someplace to live and probably said, can we use this as our home? Added this kitchen on and then proceeded to live here. as time went on, my great-grandmother, Rachel, and her husband had, I believe, 5 children. But his name was Henry Hinden, and he passed away while Rachel was pregnant with my great-grandfather, who was also named Henry Hinden. I believe she was still pregnant with him when he passed away, leaving her with children, very young children, and no way to support herself. At that time, what we've been told is that her Uncle Thurber came here to live with her, and I believe Thurber was her brother, but I'm not really sure. But he came to live here to kind of help out with her. But she had no real way to make money. So what she ended up doing was decided she was going to have a rooming house. Now, before I leave this room, I do want to say that my grandmother did tell me that right here in this corner, originally when it was just these 3 rooms, the upstairs was just an attic. It was actually what they called the loft. And this is where they had an attic loft stairs, a ladder actually, that went upstairs. And the children slept upstairs there while the parents, one of these rooms was the parents' rooms. And I believe it's this one right here that we can see into. I believe this was the parents' room. Although it may not have been, because that's where the door was too. But that's what she knows about this place. Anyways, getting back to Rachel's story. When Rachel was pregnant with the kids, didn't know what to do. Originally, this wall ended here. This was not here. This was the end of the house. One of the things that you can kind of tell that is up here, if you look at the beams up here, you can see there's a door here. But you can see there's outside cladding to the house. So it's really kind of interesting to see that. When we learned a lot about the house when we took down the ceiling. Getting back to Rachel, Rachel decided that she was going to add on to the house and make this a rooming house. So she came and added from this wall right here, there was no door here, this was the end. She came and added from here all the way to the other side, and I'll go show you from the other side. But right now what I want to show you, this is what she called her pantry. But originally, this I believe was a door going outside, and I'll go show you the other side. This is now the pantry. It's a separate room, but if you look at the floorboards under here, you will see there's a space in here for a door. There's also a space right behind here. You can see where the baseboard was added because there was also a door here. And looking at these, this door goes down to the cellar, but this door goes to what we call the dark pantry. And as you can see, it's kind of falling off now, but I've always left it up here because I think it's so cool. This is the original wallpaper that was here when she built this in. Okay, so this is now the dark pantry. It is the coolest area in the house besides the cellar, but she added this in at some point down the road because she wanted a place to keep her milk. This was a working farm, and she wanted a place to keep her milk cool and her eggs, and it was nice and cool in here, so she could keep things for a little bit in here when it was really, really hot out. But you can see we've left a lot of the wallpaper, but it is really, really falling off. And I don't know if you can tell that this was walled off and created. But let's move to the front to go on with the story. Rachel wanted to build a rooming house, so she had this entire second part of the house added on. Again, this was the end wall here, and it ended here. She ended up adding on this whole part of the house. See if I can get a better shot of this house. Let's try going outside. She added on this front door, as well as the stairs and the rest of the house. So stepping back, you can see that there's a little hall with a wall here and the stairs going upstairs. This is her front entry. Originally, this was a front to back hallway, and this wall was not here. This wall that you're looking at is where the dark pantry is on the other side, but you can tell partly because I know my grandmother told me, but you can see how they built around. They had to cut around these beautiful stair treads. And they did that to create her dark pantry for her. At some point she decided she needed a dark pantry more than she really needed a way to go through. I believe by that time she had probably stopped renting the house for whatever reason. She did remarry later on. I'll talk about that in a bit. But when she added this side on, she had 2 rooms added on, which is this one. This was my grandmother's living room. When I was growing up, this is where she had her living room. So this room was added on, the hallway was put on, and then this room was added as well. And we do know that right there, where that crack is where the door would be. On the other side of this wall is the pantry. And you can tell by the break in the floor, in the baseboard, that this used to be, there was another door right here. And this was one of the rooms. My grandmother later made this into her dining room, so she added this pantry in here. But you can see here on the floor where there is a round spot, that's the inside workings of a coal stove. They had a coal stove to heat in here. We added this slightly sagging bookcase in here. But this originally was a room that my grandmother rented. And again, the wall entered here. So my great-great-grandmother added these 2 rooms on. This door was not here. Neither was this big opening here. This big opening was not here as well. This was one room that was for a renter. And I believe that this room was a much bigger room, and this was used as an area for people, for her renters to come, because she also had rooms upstairs that she rented. So I believe that this was an area for them to sit and meet in. And you needed to have a front to back hallway. This needed to go straight through in order for that gentleman to be able to get into his room. And if you think about it, I know that this was originally her dining room. My grandmother remembers this as being her dining room. And you can see behind here, this is one of the posts that was built in, and you can see they clad it. But I left this plain so that you can see these are the colors that she originally, or at some point, had on the wall before she added wallpaper. There was some old wallpaper when we came in. But you can see that she had a little chair rail in here. And I believe this is where they sat and ate. And there was not a lot of extra room. So they sat and ate in here, and then probably had meeting place to meet next door. So going up the stairs, one of the curious things that you'll see about this house is that you can see this side is lower than this side. When she built the walls, when she built her house and this half of the house, taller ceilings were in vogue. So there's a taller ceiling on the right-hand side of the house, and that's why you see there's a higher step here than there used to be. So again, remembering that this house was 2 different heights, and again, you can see that in the pictures that I've left downstairs. So let's look this way. Looking this way, you can see there were 3 bedrooms up here. This was 1 bedroom. This was a 2nd bedroom back here. And then when we moved in, we turned this into a bathroom, but this was a very small bedroom as well. So she had 3 bedrooms up here and 1 bedroom downstairs to rent. So she probably brought in a lot of money doing that and was able to support her family. This stairway goes up to the attic. And then over here, another thing that I thought was often very curious, this hallway up here has a door on it. And I remember as a young child, my grandmother always used this to close off this part of the house in the wintertime. But I always wondered why there was a door in here. You don't generally have a door in a hallway, an upper hallway. It just didn't make sense until I found out that she had rented the house. And then it made sense. Behind this door, this hallway, these were the rooms that her family slept in. So it was a way to keep her renters from coming over and being in this part of the house. Now, when the other part was built, when she added on these renting rooms, this little boarding house area, this was always, still remember, this was just one room. At some point, she made this side as tall as the other side, and she went up with the roof and made it all one level. So these are our bedrooms. There was one bedroom here. And going down, there was this bedroom. This is wallpaper. This was wallpaper that's been here since I think my mother lived here. This was her bedroom. And this is the wallpaper she had picked out for this bedroom. She would be 82 if she were still alive. So you can see that this is a smaller room, but this was her bedroom. And it's got an odd shape because of the hallway, kind of goes at an angle. And then there was this room. And this room is a big, beautiful, bright room to have here. So this is a really nice room. This is the room that my husband and I slept in. So this is the family quarters. And this house stayed like this. My grandmother, my great-grandfather, who was Henry Hinden, married a woman named Florence Parker. She was up from near Boston. She lived up somewhere near Boston. And they had one child, which was my grandmother, Helen Hinden Blue. And when she was pregnant with when she had just had her first daughter, my great-grandmother, Florence, was killed in a car accident, in a drunk driving accident, leaving my great-grandfather alone in this big old house. And he asked my grandmother and grandfather to come live here. Now, my grandmother had been raised in this home. Her father, Henry, owned a sawmill, and his sawmill was portable, and he would go from place to place wherever he was needed. If there was a town that had a big need and was growing well, he would put his sawmill somewhere there, and he would stay there until he no longer had work, and then he would go somewhere else. My grandmother's mother, Florence, having been from Boston and educated herself, felt very, very important that my grandmother go to school. And of course, she wouldn't be able to do that if she was moving from place to place. My great-grandmother did not want that for her. So she asked the Hindens to take her in, which they did, my Grandma Rachel. And that's what I call her as Grandma Rachel. My grandmother used to call her Grandma Dudley because she remarried Dandridge Dudley later on in years, which is probably when she stopped renting out the house as a boarding space. But after she died, the house went to Henry. And then when my great-grandmother Florence was killed in a car accident, my great-grandfather asked my grandmother and grandfather to come live here. When doing that, my grandmother had said she lived and didn't want to use, the one thing she didn't want was to have to use her grandmother's kitchen. She thought it was old-fashioned, and she wanted her own kitchen. Mind you, this was back in the 30s, but things were much more modern, and she wanted a modern kitchen. And that's when this part of the house was added. This was my grandmother's kitchen. She designed this. My grandfather and her father built it for her. This was originally the door that went out back, and this was the space that she had added on. And that door was not there either. We added that in, so we'll talk about that in a minute. And then she had a nice little porch out here. She loved her little porch, and I loved it too. I loved sitting out here. And this is what she had added on when she moved in. She came here, had 8 children here in this house, raised 8 children here, and was very, very happy here. When we came along, we decided we wanted to add on to it and put in garage. So we added this space. This door was opened up and we added this space in, which is where we have my laundry. I see my husband is cleaning up. And we have stairs that go up to a big room over the garage. So that is the history of this house. I hope you enjoyed this and really helped you to understand a little bit about the house, the way that this house was made, that you can use this to look back on and help you make decisions as you stay here and try to think of what we're going to do, how we're going to live in this space and what can we do. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck with everything. Hope you enjoy the house. Bye.